The horse had been left to die in the far paddock at Thornfield, and it was the far paddock precisely because it was where things were left to die and no one had to watch. Ruth Waverley watched. She had been under stable help at Thornfield for 4 months, which meant she carried water and forked muck and was spoken to by no one above the second groom. And on the morning of the 3rd of November she came round the end of the wall with 2 buckets and found a bay gelding down in the frost, ribs like a gate. An old scar seemed white along the near shoulder, and a look in its eye that she recognized because she had worn it herself. The head groom, Mr. Sedge, came up behind her. "Leave it. Farrier's coming Thursday to put it down. It's the Duke's order. It's been ailing since August, and he'll not throw good feed after a bad animal. What is wrong with it?" "Everything. Won't eat. Won't rise half the time. It's finished." Sedge spat. "It was a good horse once. His Grace won't have it about the place going to ruin where he can see it, and I don't blame him." Ruth set down her buckets. "May I have it," she said, "if it is going to be shot Thursday regardless?" Sedge looked at her the way a man looks at a lunatic he has not the energy to argue with. "You want a dying horse. I want the 4 days between now and Thursday, and I want to be let alone in them, and I will do my own work besides. If it is dead Thursday, you have lost nothing. If it is not, you may tell His Grace the underhelp kept it off the farrier's bill." She was already unbuttoning her coat to put over the animal's neck. "You may say it was nothing to do with you, Mr. Sedge. I will own the whole of it." Sedge, who had a soft place he did not advertise, said Thursday, and went away, and did not send anybody to carry her buckets, which was his way of saying yes. She did not sleep Wednesday night, or Thursday, and the farrier came and went on Thursday without his pistol, because on Thursday morning the bay gelding was standing. Not well. Standing, she had got it up with a sling of sacking and the second groom's grudging help. And she had not fed it grain, because a starved gut cannot take grain. She had fed it warm gruel and boiled linseed a little at a time through the night, and she had cleaned the thing that was actually killing it, which was not everything at all. It was an abscess deep in the near hind, tracking up under the frog where nobody had looked, because nobody had lifted the foot, because nobody had cared to hold a dying horse, still long enough to lift it. She had poulticed it. She had drawn it. By Thursday there was a channel of foul matter out of that foot, the length of her finger, and the fever going out of the animal like a tide, and it stood in the frost and put its nose against her collar, and she stood very still and let it. She had done this before. That was the part nobody at Thornfield knew. Ruth Waverley had grown up at her father's coaching yard on the Bath Road, 22 horses and a farrier's forge, and she had held sick animals since she was 6 years old, and she had lost the yard and her father in the same 18 months to a creditor and a fever, and she had come to Thornfield under her mother's name to carry water, because carrying water at a great house was a roof, and she had told no one any of it. She looked at the white scar along the gelding's shoulder while it breathed against her, and she thought it an old wound, and she thought no more about it, because she did not yet know whose horse it was or where the scar had come from. The Duke of Thornfield did not know his horse was alive for 11 days. Adrian Carr, 7th Duke of Thornfield, was 37, and he did not go to the far paddock, and he had not gone to the stables at all with any regularity since the spring, because the stables were where the horse was, and the horse was a thing he had given an order about in August and did not care to have explained to him twice. He had given a great many orders in August. His sister had died in July. Eleanor Carr had been 31 and had broken her neck at a wall in the July hunt, on her own mare, in front of him, and Adrian had come home and shut up her rooms and sold her hunters and given orders about the far paddock, and the household had learnt very quickly not to say her name. The bay gelding in the far paddock was not one of Eleanor's hunters, It was older than that, but it had been ailing since August, and August was a month the Duke of Thornfield did not examine, and so the animal had gone to the far paddock with the rest of what he could not look at, and he had not asked one question about it since. He heard, on the 14th of November, from his valet, who heard it from the second groom, that the under-stable help had a dying horse standing and eating in the low barn, and had refused 3 times to let the farrier near it. "Which horse?" said the Duke. "The old bay, your grace, the one from the far paddock." Adrian Carr put down his coffee. He went to the low barn himself, which he had not done in months, and he stood in the doorway with the grey morning behind him. And he looked at a bay gelding that was thin and scarred and alive, and eating hay out of a rack. And something went through him that he had spent 4 months making very certain nothing would. He knew the horse. He knew the scar on the shoulder, because he had been there when it was made, a foal, a fence, a bad afternoon 11 years gone. And he knew the horse because he had bred it, out of his own mare, in the year he was 26. And he had given it away. He had given it to his sister. On her 16th birthday. A leggy bay foal with a scar already on its shoulder, and Eleanor had named it Michaelmas because it was born in September, and she had ridden it for 11 years and then put it out to grass when it went stiff, and it had lived quietly in a low meadow at Thornfield, being nobody's concern, until July, when everything of Eleanor's had been sold or shut away or sent to die in the far paddock by a man who could not tell the difference. In August, between clearing a stable and burying a sister. He had ordered his sister's own horse shot because he had not been able to make himself walk down and look at which horse it was. He had stood at the July wall and watched his sister fall and had not been able to reach her in time, and he had spent the 4 months since building a house in which no reminder of her was permitted to survive, and he had been so thorough about it that he had ordered the death of the one living creature that had loved her back for 11 years, and had very nearly succeeded. The horse was not a reminder of Eleanor. That was the thing that came to him, standing in the barn doorway, and it took the last of the strength out of his legs. The horse was the last of Eleanor. It had carried her up every lane in the county. It had felt her weight and known her hand. There was more of his sister left in that scarred bay gelding eating hay in a borrowed stall than in all the shut rooms and sold hunters and locked doors of the last 4 months, and he had signed its death in August without lifting his head, and a girl who carried water had refused 3 times to let it happen. Adrian Carr stood in the doorway of the low barn and could not speak, and a young woman he had never seen before in his life came round the end of the stall with a bucket, saw the Duke of Thornfield standing in his own barn white as a sheet, and said, not knowing him, taking him for a steward or a visiting gentleman, "You'll want to stand off him a little, sir. He's been badly used, and he doesn't care yet for men in the doorway." "Do you know whose horse this is?" Adrian said. "His Grace's, I'm told, sir. He was to be put down. I asked for the 4 days. Ruth set the bucket down and misread the whole of the man's face as disapproval. I did my own work besides. It was no cost to the house. If there's a fault in it, it's mine and not Mr. Sedge's. He told me to leave it, and I did not." "You did not leave it." "No, sir." She lifted her chin a little. "I have watched a great many things be left, sir, and I find I have got no more of it in me. If I am to be turned off for keeping a horse alive that was going to be shot anyway, then I would take it as a kindness to be told plainly, and not made to wait on it, because I have been waited on a decision before, and it is the worst part." Adrian Carr looked at a woman of no rank at all, who had just, without knowing it, described the exact shape of his own last 4 months. "What is your name?" "Ruth Waverley, sir." It was half a lie. Waverley, was her mother, and she gave it steadily. "You are not going to be turned off, Miss Waverley." His voice was not quite even, and he did not know how to make it so. "That horse is called Michaelmas. He was foaled here 11 years ago in September, which is how he came by the name. I bred him. I gave him to my sister on her 16th birthday, and she rode him until 2 summers ago." He stopped. "I gave the order to have him shot. I did not know which horse was in the far paddock. I want you to understand that I did not know, because I find I cannot bear for you to think I knew and gave the order anyway." Ruth Waverley stood very still, and then she looked at the white scar along the gelding's shoulder as though seeing it for the first time. "Then I am glad of the 4 days, Your Grace," she said quietly, "and I am sorry I spoke to you as I did, and I am not sorry I kept him." He came to the low barn every day after that, which the household noticed, because the Duke of Thornfield had not been seen to do anything every day since July. He did not come to give orders. He came and stood, at first, and watched a stable hand work a horse back into a horse, watched her walk it. 20 minutes, and then 30, and then an hour, up and down the frozen lane, watched her rub the wasted quarters with a wisp of straw twisted the old way, watched her hold its foot and pare the healing sole with a borrowed knife, and a steadiness that no underhelp at Thornfield had any business owning. "You have done this before," he said, on the 4th day. "Yes, Your Grace." "Where?" And Ruth Waverley, who had told no one at Thornfield anything true in 4 months, found that she could not, standing beside his sister's horse, make herself lie to the man about the one thing that mattered. "My father kept a coaching yard on the Bath Road, Your Grace. 22 horses and his own forge. I was raised in it. I held my first sick animal at 6 and set my first bone at 11. And I lost the yard 3 years ago to a debt my father could not pay before he died of the fever the same winter. And I have carried water at 3 great houses since under my mother's name. Because a woman who says she can doctor a horse is a woman nobody will hire, and a woman who carries water is a woman with a roof." She met his eyes. "You did ask, Your Grace." She turned back to the horse's foot because it was easier than his face. "I have found, Your Grace, that there is no place in England for a woman who knows horses. A yard will not hire me, because the men will not take orders from me, and the owner will not lose the men. A great house will not hire me to the stable for the same reason. So I carry water, which anybody may do, and I hold my tongue, which is harder, and when I see a thing done wrong I say nothing, because the day I open my mouth about a splint or a girth or an abscess in a near hind, I am a water girl who forgets herself, and I am turned off, and I begin again at the next house 1 county over." She pared a curl of sole away and set the foot down gently. "I have begun again 3 times. I know exactly how many great houses lie between here and Bristol, and I have carried water at every 3rd one. That is a great waste. It is the arrangement, Your Grace. I did not make it, and I cannot mend it. I can only carry water quietly and doctor what nobody is watching, which is how your sister's horse came to be alive, because nobody was watching it, and so for once there was no one to tell me to leave off." He was quiet a moment. "Waverley is the mother's name." "Yes, and the father's?" "Alderton, Your Grace." She said it like setting down something heavy. "Of the Alderton yard at Chippenham, which you will not have heard of, because it is not there any longer." He had heard of it. That was the thing she had not expected, and it stopped her hands on the wisp of straw. "I have heard of the Alderton yard," Adrian said slowly. "My father changed horses there for 30 years on the Bath Road. He said Alderton kept the best coach team between London and the sea, and would not sell a lame animal to a man he disliked at any price." He was watching her now with something entirely new in his face. "You are that Alderton's daughter, and you have been carrying water in my yard for 4 months. There was no other work, Your Grace, for what I am. There is a very great deal of work for what you are. There is simply none of it that a yard will give a woman." He said it flatly, as a fact he had never before had cause to examine, and was examining now. "My head groom is 61, and his hands are going. I have 40 horses, and a stud I have not had the heart to walk through since July. And I have had, this whole autumn, a woman under my own roof who set a coaching yard on the Bath Road, carrying buckets. Because she was born to the wrong, he stopped himself. 'Finish it, Your Grace,' said Ruth. I have finished it in my own head a good many times. I would as soon hear it out loud from somebody else, for once. 'Because you were born to the wrong sex and the wrong yard,' Adrian said, 'and I have spent 4 months unable to walk into my own stable, and you have spent them mending the one horse in it I would have given anything not to lose. I do not think either of us has been where we ought to be.' The trouble was Gerald Vane, who owned the neighbouring land and had wanted the Thornfield stud for 11 years, and who had spent the autumn being extremely kind to a grieving duke. Vane had a cousin at the bank in Bath. The cousin had a ledger, and in the 3rd week of November, Gerald Vane came to Thornfield to dinner and mentioned, over the port, with enormous delicacy, that he had heard the most distressing thing, that the Duke's new favourite in the stable, the water girl everyone was talking of, was in fact the daughter of a bankrupt named Alderton, that the Alderton yard had gone down owing £400, and that some of that debt had never been discharged, and that the daughter had, in the strict legal sense, absconded from it by taking service under a false name. I only mention it, Adrian, because a duke's house is a duke's house. A woman living under an assumed name to escape a debt, it is the sort of thing that gets into the papers. And she has had the run of your yard, your stud book, your accounts, for all anybody knows." Vane turned his glass. "I should hate to see you made a fool of twice in 1 year. It was very well done. Every fact in it was true. The Alderton yard had gone down owing £400, some of it was undischarged. Ruth had taken service under her mother's name. And the last sentence, 'twice in 1 year, was a knife slid in so smoothly that Adrian did not feel it for a full second, and then felt nothing else. He did the wrong thing, because grief makes a man reach for the nearest certainty, and the nearest certainty was that people take from you, and then they are gone. He sent for her to the library, which he had never done, and he asked her whether it was true that there was an undischarged debt against the Alderton yard, and whether she had taken service under a name that was not entirely her own to escape being found. Ruth Waverley stood in the library of a house where she had carried water for 4 months, and understood, from the flatness of his voice, exactly what had happened, and roughly who had done it. "Yes," she said, "to both. There is £110 still owing on my father's yard, to a corn factor in Devizes, and I have not paid it because I have not had £110, and I have carried water under my mother's name, because Ruth Alderton cannot get hired, and owes money, and Ruth Waverley cannot get hired, but does not." She did not look away from him. "I have not touched your accounts, Your Grace. I have not opened your stud book. I have mended your sister's horse, and I think you know that, and I think somebody has spent this evening making very certain you would forget it for long enough to send for me in this voice. Miss, you may check every word of it. Write to the corn factor at Devizes. His name is Paunceford, and he is an honest man, and he will tell you, I have never once pretended the debt was not mine. Write to anybody. I have run from the debt, Your Grace. I will not pretend I have not, but I have run from it the way a woman runs who means to come back and pay it, not the way a woman runs who means never to be found. Her voice did not shake, and it cost her that it did not. I will go tonight, if you wish it, but I will not stand here and be looked at the way you are looking at me, because I have done nothing to earn it except be born to a yard that failed, and I have had 3 years of being looked at like that, and I find I would rather be turned out than looked at. He did not turn her out. He also did not apologize that night, which took him 2 days, and the 2 days very nearly cost him everything, because Gerald Vane had a second move ready and did not wait. Vane went to the corn factor at Devizes before Adrian did. He bought the debt. £110, an old dead account, of no interest to anybody. Gerald Vane paid Paunceford the full sum on the 21st of November and took the assignment of it in his own name. And then he sent his man to Thornfield with a very civil letter informing Miss Ruth Alderton that her father's debt was now held by Mr. Vane, and that Mr. Vane would be obliged if she would call upon him at Marsden to discuss the terms of its discharge. The terms did not need spelling out. A debt held by a neighbouring landowner over a woman with no money is not a debt. It is a leash. Ruth received the letter in the low barn, standing beside Michaelmas, and she read it twice, and she understood the whole of the shape of it at once. That Vane meant to have her either gone from Thornfield in disgrace or beholden to him, and that either one served his one true purpose, which had never been her at all. I am not the thing he wants, she thought, folding the letter. I am only the nearest lever to the thing he wants, which is a grieving man's stud and a grieving man's land. She did not take the letter to the Duke. She saddled Michaelmas, the first time the horse had carried a rider in half a year, and he carried her steadily, because she had made him steady, and she rode to Marsden herself. Adrian found the barn empty, and the horse gone, and a stable boy who said Miss Waverley had ridden out toward Marsden with a letter in her hand, and the Duke of Thornfield was on his own horse and after her, before he had fully understood why his heart had gone cold. He caught them on the Marsden road, in the last of the light, a mile short of Vane's gate. Ruth. She reined in. She did not look surprised to see him, only tired. You should not have come, Your Grace. This is mine to do. He has bought your debt. He has bought my father's debt, which is a different thing, though he means me to feel it as the same. She held out the letter and let him read it. He wants me gone, or he wants me kept. And either one embarrasses you into selling him the thing he has wanted for 11 years, which is your good bottom land and the water rights that go with the stud. I am not the point, Your Grace. I have never been the point. I only walked into the middle of it carrying buckets. Adrian read the letter twice, and when he looked up his face had changed entirely, because a man who has spent 4 months unable to fight anything had just been handed something he could fight. Then we will go and see him together. No. She said it gently. You will come, because I cannot stop you, and because it is your land he is truly after. But I will do the talking, Your Grace, and you will let me, because if you fight this for me, it becomes a duke defending his water girl, and every soul in the county will draw the obvious conclusion, and I will have to leave regardless. If I fight it myself, it is only a debt, and a woman who means to pay it, and there is nothing in that for anyone to whisper about. She gathered her reins. I have spent 3 years learning the difference. Let me use it. They rode into Marsden together in the dusk, and Gerald Vane came out onto his own steps, expecting a routed girl, and found, instead, Ruth Alderton on a bay gelding with the Duke of Thornfield a length behind her, and saying nothing at all. Mr. Vane, Ruth did not get down. You have bought my father's debt. £110 to Paunceford at Devizes, assigned to you on the 21st. I have come to discharge it. Vane smiled. My dear Miss Alderton, there is no hurry. I had only hoped we might discuss. There is a great deal of hurry, because a debt held over a discussion is not a debt, Mr. Vane. It is something with a worse name, and I think you know it, and I think His Grace knows it now too, which is the one thing this evening you did not intend. She reached into her coat and brought out a folded paper of her own. This is a draft on the bank at Bath for £110, drawn against wages owed and advanced to me this afternoon by His Grace's steward at ordinary interest, on a note I have signed in my own true name, Ruth Alderton, at 4%, repayable over 3 years. It is a plain loan between an employer and a servant, and there is nothing in it any newspaper could trouble to print. You may take your £110, Mr. Vane. You will find it discharges the debt entirely and leaves you holding nothing at all. Vane's smile had gone somewhere. His Grace's steward advanced you, on my note, at interest, which I will repay, because I have always meant to repay it. To Paunceford, or to you, or to the devil himself, it was never the money I ran from. She held the draft out. Take it, Mr. Vane. The only thing you have bought this month is £110 of another man's paper, and you have paid full price for it, and I am about to hand it back to you. And Gerald Vane, who had spent 11 years and a good deal of cunning to lever a grieving duke out of his land, took a bank draft from a water girl on his own front steps, because there was nothing else in the world he could do, and the Duke of Thornfield sat his horse behind her and did not say one single word, because she had told him not to, and because watching her was the finest thing he had done in half a year. Vane sold up in the spring and went to Leicestershire, the way such men do, and the reason he sold was that the county heard the story. It always hears the story. And a man who buys a dead debt to lever it over a servant is a man who has told the county exactly what he is. And the county at Thornfield did its own quiet arithmetic and stopped taking his hand. Adrian rode home beside Ruth in the dark, and a mile from Thornfield he said, "Why would you not let me pay it outright?" I offered, in the steward's office. You made him write a note at 4% when I would have torn the thing up, because the day you tear it up, Your Grace, I am a woman, a duke, bought out of trouble, and I have been bought and sold enough for one life, and I find I would rather owe you £110 at 4% for 3 years and be square. She was looking straight ahead at the dark road. I will pay every quarter of it. I have already worked out that it comes to a little under £1 a month, and I would take it as a very great kindness, Your Grace, if you would let me, because it is the first debt in 3 years I have been able to pay, and I have wanted to pay a debt for a long time. Adrian Carr rode in silence for a while. Marry me, he said. And it is not a debt. It is a settlement, and you may pay me the £1 a month for 40 years if it pleases you, and I will bank every one of them and give them to our daughter. Ruth reined in. That is the worst proposal I have ever heard, Your Grace, she said, and her voice had gone unsteady at last, and I have heard exactly one, and it was better than that. I have no gift for it. I have not said a true thing easily since July. He had stopped his horse beside hers in the dark. I will say it plainly, and then you may do as you like. My sister loved that horse for 11 years, and I ordered it shot because I could not walk down and look at it, and you walked down and looked at it when it was nobody's and dying. And you have looked at every hard thing in this whole business straight, including me. I do not want a wife who was rescued. I have watched you refuse to be rescued for a month. I want the woman who rode to Marsden without telling me. He paused. That is the reason, and it is the whole of it, and it has nothing to do with the yard or the debt or the name. Ruth Alderton sat on his dead sister's horse in the dark and was quiet a long moment. Yes, she said, And I am keeping the note, Your Grace. 4%. I mean to pay it. I know you do, said Adrian Carr. It is why I asked. They were married in the spring at Thornfield Church, and Michaelmas stood in the low meadow that had been his in Eleanor's time, sound and fat and stiff in the near hind, and sound in every way that mattered. And he lived 4 more years, which nobody had thought possible in November, least of all the farrier. Ruth Alderton became mistress of the Thornfield stud, which had never had a mistress, and which the county thought scandalous for about a season, and then did not, because the foals she bred out of the old mare took prizes at Salisbury 2 years running, and a yard that wins does not stay scandalous for long. She paid the note every quarter, a little under £1 a month, into her husband's own hand, and he took it every time and banked it in a separate account in their daughter's name, and the girl had it when she came of age and never entirely understood why her mother laughed the day it was explained to her. Old Sedge, the head groom, retired the second winter with his hands quite gone, and Ruth engaged his successor herself, in person, at named wages, and asked him one question that no one else in the county would have thought to ask a man applying for a stable, which was whether he had ever in his life kept a dying animal alive that everyone had told him to let go. The man said he had, once, a dog, when he was a boy. She hired him. There is a scar on the shoulder of a bay gelding buried under the oak in the low meadow at Thornfield, and there is a white mark on the ground now where the grass grows differently over him, and the Duchess of Thornfield walks down to it still. Most seasons, the way she once walked down to a far paddock nobody else would go to. He was supposed to be gone by Thursday, Adrian said, standing beside her there one autumn, years on. The farrier had his order. He was supposed to be gone, and I was supposed to be carrying water at the next house by spring. Ruth put her hand flat on the oak bark. Neither of us left. I have thought about that a good deal. 2 things that were meant to be, got rid of, in the same yard, in the same November. You mended him. I mended the horse, Adrian. She looked up at her husband. The horse mended you. I only held the foot up long enough for somebody to look. And the Duke of Thornfield, who had once been unable to walk into his own stable, stood with his wife over the grave of his sister's horse in the low autumn light, and did not say anything at all, because there was nothing that wanted saying, and because he had learnt, in the 4 months it took a stable hand to save an animal he had ordered shot, that the truest things are the ones you stand near, in silence.